All right, so today we are going to jump into Module 15. This is our last sort of new content module. And because tomorrow is a holiday and there's no class for my Tuesday, Thursday class, um, I'm going to spread out this lecture a little bit more for you guys than for them. I want to make sure we're taking enough time to cover the material because at this point I know things are relatively complicated as opposed to earlier in the class. So want to make sure we're taking enough time to cover the material and give you plenty of work time as well. So we're continuing on with object-oriented programming. And if you remember, we talked about the idea of a class as a blueprint for an object that we make. Each class defines both the data and the functionality associated with that data. So the example we keep using is a car, like properties might include the number of wheels, the number of windows, the miles on the car, the last time it was serviced, something like that. And the methods or the things that that car can do would be like drive, or we could perform a service on that car, we could paint it a different color, we can do all kinds of things. We also talked about the idea of getter and setter methods, which are designed to control the data that goes in and out of the object. Okay, setters allow us to safely set different properties inside the object without having to worry too much about messing it up by putting the wrong kind of data in there. If we access properties directly instead of using a setter, we always run the risk of putting something in that's the wrong data type or something that doesn't fit that object's definition, and then we could mess other things up down the road. And then, of course, a getter is a way of getting those values or those properties from the object. Getters, accessing a property for the purpose of reading that property is less risky than setting a property from outside the object, in that you can't really mess things up. But creating getters for data that you want to use outside the object is still good practice because it allows us a little bit more control and allows us to sort of change our minds about what we want to do with that data down the road. So using setters and getters is good practice anytime we want to access the properties of that object from outside the object. So today I want to add a couple more, and these are interesting because it unveils something that we didn't know maybe that you can do with objects. Somebody's computer explode or what?
No, I lost
A battery? Uh-oh. All right. Anybody finds a spare battery rolling around, it's probably in here somewhere. All right, so we've got a couple of things that are going on here. So one of the things that we haven't talked about that we can do with classes or objects is we can actually create what are called derivative classes, or what are more commonly known as child classes. And a child class, just like children in real life, inherits things from the parent class. So it allows us to create classes that are similar, but not identical to the parent. Like a lot of other object-oriented programming concepts, this makes more sense when you see it in code. So inheritance is the first concept. And so let's look at this sort of in a thing that we're familiar with, right? We've got, instead of a car class, maybe we have a generic vehicle class. Okay, it could be any kind of vehicle, but it has a method called drive and has a property called gas that represents how much gas is less than the vehicle. So every time it drives, the amount of gas goes down. That's all it does. That's the interaction between those two things. So it's a very simple vehicle class. And what we've done here below it is we've created two child classes. And these child classes are explicitly based on the vehicle class. So since this is their parent, the truck and the car both inherit all of the properties and methods from the parent class. Okay, so truck can also drive and also has gas. A car can drive and has gas, but it's a more specific type of thing now, right? So those are both vehicles, but they're different types of vehicles. And the truck, in addition, has a payload, stuff that it can, how much it can carry, and maybe it has a method called load up the truck, where we fill the payload. And the car just says, well, we're just going to inherit those, and that's going to be it. So maybe the car has other properties like passengers or something like that. But these child classes can be used to create objects that are based on the parent. Now, sometimes you don't have multiple child classes. Sometimes you just have one child class, and this is how you're going to see it a lot of times. But let's say I'm using the turtle class, right? We've all used the turtle class throughout this whole class. If I want to draw a square using the turtle class, I have to go forward, turn right, go forward, turn right. I have to do that 4 times, right, to draw the whole square. But because there's no method for turtle called square. There's a circle, but not a square. There's no triangle either. So maybe I want to create a subclass or a child class called Super Turtle. And Super Turtle has extra abilities, superpowers. And so what I can do is I can say, we're going to create a class called Super Turtle based on turtle. And it's going to inherit forward and right and circle and all the things that turtles can do. But it's also going to have some additional things that I tell it to do. And I can, in that class, define those methods where if I want the turtle to draw a square, that maybe it's a method that takes the side length of the square as a property. And then it just draws the whole square for me. So instead of saying forward, right, forward, right, forward, right, forward, I'm just going to say square 30, and it draws a square with 30 pixel sides. So that's a way that you will commonly see parent and child classes used. So it's not always to create more specific things. Sometimes it's to say, I want to take the parent class because it's got some good functionality there, but I want it to do more. I need it to do more for the purpose of my program. So that's another way that you can build on a class and extend what that class can do for your program. And in fact, when we get to the game design module, which is coming up, one of my favorites, you will be using basic classes in that module, in that library, for sprites and players and enemies and things like that. And you'll be giving them extra abilities that tell them what to do, because a generic player sprite doesn't know what it looks like, it doesn't know how to move. So you'll be actually telling it how to do those things as a child class of a generic type of class in that object. But that's a bit down the road.